Welcome, YouTube, once again to the weekly podcast on Hell on Wheels. Unfortunately, not going to have a podcast on The Walking Dead as it's taking its mid-season break, but at least we have this show to talk about. Right off the bat, this was certainly an improvement over last week's episode, episode 3, which, again, was basically just a filler. This episode, it seems like it's gotten a bit more on track. They're pushing the revenge plot line with Bohannon to the side. I guarantee you we're not going to see that come about until the season finale. And doing what I was hoping this is really going to be about is about them building the damn railroad. In this case, we have this episode's really focusing on a pay issue. The fact that Durant can't get, or he's having, which was already hinted at before, he's having some money issues, somewhat related to the fact that he doesn't have the map, so he doesn't know where he's going to be building to. He also, they're also still apparently behind. You'd figure at this point they would start picking things up. I guess we'll see next episode how that pans out. And of course, this is also the pugilism episode, i.e., boxing. Which is the whole setup for that. First, well, we'll explain the setup is basically because of the pay, Elam kind of picks up on the fact that they're not going to get paid. Only the walking bosses are going to get paid in order to kind of try to keep a lid on everything. And Elam wants to be considered a walking boss. But Bohannon's really not having it. It kind of threatens him with his job, and at one point, he eventually Elam decides to quit it, drop what he's going to do, and he's going to go back to camp. And then the most comically inept fight I've seen on television in a while, and that is saying something considering what's out there nowadays, occurs where they begin wrestling, him and Bohannon, over this, like, you'll put down that knife, or that gun, and it's like, I'll put you in your place. I don't need no slave uprising, which is something surprising over Bohannon. They kind of built his character to be a little bit, I don't want to say up to modern standards, but you didn't expect that type of language. This is kind of peculiarly written. The way his character was written when it comes to that stuff seemed a little forced. It just didn't seem like something we would say based on his previous characterization. Yeah, you thought he was a little bit not up with the slave thing. He said he had freed his slaves before the war even. Now granted, this is probably more realistic even of how people's reactions are. Slavery, you can be against slavery and all that, but you still have these feelings of this boy's got to be put in his place. I mean, that's really how it happened. The same way as you can, go to an old folks home or something, and they might not consider themselves to be racist. They might have had ideals desegregate. They supported desegregation, but they still have they'll say some rather racist things. Baby steps, everybody, baby steps. But yeah, that little confrontation turns into this kind of grappling wrestling match, which is. It almost looked like the two were doing a waltz. Now, I guarantee this was the director trying to not have this turn into a full fist fight yet, so you can have the more exciting fight later. But it looked comically bad how they did it. I blame the director on it. I don't blame the actors for that. That was clearly the director's fault of the episode, which I don't have IMDb up in front of me, so I don't know who exactly that was. But yeah, anyway, Durant decides to take advantage of this. He happens to be having a picnic at this time, and he decides he's going to say, oh, no, there's pay's coming. We just had a slight delay. And decides to distract everybody by saying, oh, we're going to have it, after work. We're going to have we'll have an official fight, and I'll give you guys all free liquor. Kind of to distract everybody from the fact that they're not getting actual pay. When it comes to the actual fight, I was thinking at first, I was really worried that they were going to kind of do the stereotypical, Elam's, I'm going to fight to show who I am, kind of, Black Power type fight moment, and I was worried because it's too stereotypical, and I think that I credit this show for having some decent writing abilities and to avoid kind of the trap. I mean, not that there's any, obviously, not that I don't think, you know, Muhammad Ali, greatest boxer ever, that whole type of, I'm fighting for, what I believe and all that stuff. Obviously great to hear and all that stuff, but as a story, it's something that we've seen in about 2 million times. It's kind of like the classic, doing an underdog Rocky movie, which is the reason I didn't see movies like Warrior and such. It's just been the same goddamn plot, so you want to hear a different story. If I'm coming across right on that. I was kind of worried that they were going to do that. I was hoping they were going to take a little bit of risk and even like have Bohannon outright win. And at first I thought that's what they were going to do. In fact, even I was a little surprised that, jeez, because at first Elam decides to not fight back. He, for whatever reason, because beforehand he had every episode it seems like now is having another speech that Elam goes talk to the one prostitute, the one with the Indian markings, and basically every time he talks to her, it boils down to her saying, they're going to kill you for something he's about to do. I can kind of now understand why he doesn't really listen to her all that entirely, because every episode, he says he's going to do something, she says they're going to kill him for doing it because he's a black guy. And then he does it and doesn't get killed. I hope they keep that up, actually. I want that to be a thing on this show, that every episode she comes up and says, they're going to kill you if you drink that water. Gulp. I'm not dead. And Bohannon just kind of looks there, he's like, oh, you drunk the water. Oh, well. It really has been 2 episodes, this episode and one before that. But, that does seem to be the pattern of the show, is every episode she tells him he's going to die. And then he doesn't. Anyway, but he's not fighting back in this fight, and so I really thought Bohannon was just going to really beat the crap out of him. I was like, jeez. And then I thought, then he starts fighting back. He gets his little stereotypical motivational speech, and he really starts fighting and beating the crap out of Bohannon, in which I was like, fine and all that, but I thought you guys were doing something creative there for a second, something unexpected for the audience, because most people going in kind of going, okay, we get it, he's gonna find his inner strength and prove who he is and win the fight. But then there started to be this little pepper incident. You saw this pepper stuff being passed around, and at first I'm thinking, oh, somebody's, Bohannon's not going to take the pepper knowingly, but somebody's going to, throw it in Elam's eye or, rub some on Bohannon's wrappings in order to, throw the fight in his favor, which, okay, that's a bit of a twist, where he was proving himself, but then they kind of get out of what looked like it was a get out of the rut free, because a lot of people, we had the Irish brothers who were relying on Bohannon winning the fight in order to save them. They had a subplot where they couldn't pay up the Swede, so the Swede cut down their tent and such, and took some of their slides because they were making enough money, and they said outright that they had bet everything they had on Bohannon. But they did make a very interesting twist, surprisingly. Instead of putting the pepper juice on Bohannon's gloves, they sabotaged Bohannon. They put it on Elam's glove, and Elam winds up winning because this Irish brothers, well, one of the Irish brothers, had actually bet everything on Elam because it was 30-1 odds. And so it's kind of interesting because as the audience we go, oh, he didn't really win. In fact, Bohannon at that point had been coming back, and it looked like he was probably going to win on his own. So it's kind of interesting because it kind of takes away that victory. I mean, everyone else doesn't know about how the fight was rigged like that, but we as the audience go, it's kind of a false. He kind of proved himself falsely, but he doesn't know it, and no one else knows it. It's an interesting way. So I was happy with the writers in that regard. Despite all my concerns at first, they were able to pull out a pretty good plot twist. That was the main plot, and eventually at the end he gives, as he's passing out the pay, he kind of gives Elam his somewhat reluctantly his walking boss pay. Again, I think Bohannon's character, based on what we've seen before, it doesn't quite fit exactly his character from previous episodes. I mean, granted, this is episode 4, so it's still time to, explore his character a bit. He obviously still has some prejudices, which is good. It's good to show you. I wanted a rather historically accurate show to kind of show how people were back then, and even back in these days, even the people that weren't that racist were still kind of racist. So it's an authentic character, in my opinion, and that's why I'm not worried about it. I'm sure there's a few people that are going to kind of be turned off of Bohannon because of this, because they're going to now see him as a racist. But I kind of get what they were showing here for historically is even you have this character Bohannon who really isn't much of a racist. He's still a product of his society. He's still going to have some lingering prejudices. And I appreciate that putting them in there. It's a rather bold move to do from a writing perspective. And a very risky one, too. Well, that kind of goes with being bold. Anything else? Oh, yes. Of course, 2 other plots. One, we have the Reverend and... Oh, God, what's his Christian name is... Joseph Blackmoon. Yeah, actually, I think that's his full name. Joseph Blackmoon and Reverend Cole kind of run on off to the Indians because they see a couple of Union scouts, so they know that the army is coming to kind of crush the Indian movement. I don't want to call it a rebellion because technically they're their own nation at this point. Yeah, so they get the sense the army's coming out and they're going to go. They want to go out and warn. However, we do get introduced to Reverend Cole's long forgotten daughter. Apparently, her mother died. There's a real tension. You really don't hear too much about this, other than that this is a very distant relationship. They haven't seen each other in over 12 years. He's very distant. He's very cold to her to a degree, even to the point where Joseph is rather kind of surprised by his attitudes towards her. But they do go out. They give the warning. The Indians did say they were going to come back into town to try to negotiate a peace. It'll be interesting next. I think they're going to start doing that next episode. However, they kind of ended the episode on a bit of a maybe not, as the Indians, one of the Indians, or Native Americans, if you want to be politically correct, said they had a vision of them killing the Iron Beast, which of course means the train. So are they going to come really in peace, or are they going to have alternative plans? Oh, and of course, one of the other major plot points of the entire series is starting to be revolved around this season, or this episode, which is Miss Bell, which I had thought was what happened. She had the maps, and she's keeping them nice and secure, and she reveals that to Durant. At first, I thought I maybe had missed something the way she was acting, that she maybe that she didn't have the maps, but now she says, and she just wants what her husband was due, which that seems like an actual rather reasonable response. Durant was going to have to pay the guy anyway. But there's something else, and I think we're going to see that there's going to be another element coming up there. Also, I almost forgot. We had Wes Studi in this episode. He is Joseph Blackmoon's father. For those of you who don't know who Wes Studi is, he's the one guy whenever they have a Native American in a movie or a TV show, he's the guy. I hate to say it, but yeah, he is the guy that they kind of automatically go to. He was the villain from The Last of the Mohicans. I mean, he's been in other stuff too. He was, Avatar. He basically was playing another Native American, just giant blue elf-looking one. But he was in Heat. He was Sagat in Street Fighter. Yeah, he looks Thai. But yeah, Wes Studi was in this one. Glad to see him doing stuff. Certainly, they've got some good actors. They get some really good part, and I think he's going to be a recurring role in here because he's playing the father, so he'll be in at least a few episodes. Other than that, I mean, really, there was some interesting themes. I think some interesting and bold writing moves in this episode. And we'll continue to see. I hope we get more of these issues with them actually building the railroad and seeing more of how they have to construct a railroad, overcoming these kind of industrial challenges. Because in reality, that's despite how much we talk about with Western and the conquering the West, the railroads, you don't really see too much of that. There's not that many shows. I mean, there's a few that actually deal with the construction and what people had to do to actually build these. It's always a background element. Maybe in a film they'll go to a railroad camp or something where they're building it for like a couple scenes. But with this one, I think it's really... I hope we see more episodes of them actually having to overcome challenges. I hope we, like, by at least the end of this season, reach the Rockies, and if they do a season 2, that can take place in the Rockies. Because really, when you get to the Rockies, there's some real challenges of, like, building bridges, dealing with landslides, just the overwhelming cold. So we will see. Other than that, not a whole lot to talk about. Well, I mean, we talked a good deal, let's see what my counter's at. A good 15, 16 minutes on this. I am getting a little disappointed in Durant not going off on his big rants as much. I mean, he gets a slight line Solomon was it Solomon brought the temple down around him. I shall do the same. Something along those lines. I want more of that. Give me more crazy Durant. Give me more. That's why I like the character. He was best thing about the show. Give me more of him being batshit himself. Unleash Colomini. Just unleash him. Never go wrong with that. Alright, signing off, guys.